Hello everyone. We will be discussing a single price monopolies, pricing and output strategies in this lecture. Let's start with marginal revenue and elasticity. Marginal revenue is the change in total revenue that occurs when the sale of output increases by 1 unit. Elasticity, you all know what elasticity is. You have already covered this. Elasticity is the responsiveness in the quantity demanded of a good or service when its price changes. Now, if you have forgotten the basics of elasticity, I want you all to pause the video here and brush up your elasticity chapter skills, because we are going to be needing the basics for the lecture ahead. All right, let's begin. A single price monopoly's marginal revenue, MR, is related to the elasticity of demand for its good. Please remember, we are talking about a single price monopoly, not a monopoly that practices price discrimination. From this lecture onwards, we're only going to focus on a single price monopoly. Okay? A single price monopoly's marginal revenue, MR, is directly related to the elasticity of demand for its good. If demand is elastic, a fall in price brings an increase in total revenue. The increase in revenue from the increase in quantity sold outweighs the decrease in revenue from the lower price, and marginal revenue is positive. So when demand is elastic, a price fall increases your total revenue. Your marginal revenue is positive. If demand is inelastic, a fall in price brings a decrease in total revenue. The increase in revenue from the increase in quantity sold is outweighed by the decrease in revenue from the lower price, and marginal revenue is negative. So, for inelastic demand, a price fall decreases your total revenue and your marginal revenue is negative. Lastly, if demand is unit elastic, that means if your elasticity is equals to 1, total revenue does not change. The increase in revenue from the increase in quantity sold offsets the decrease in revenue from the lower price, and marginal revenue is 0. That means per unit elasticity, your marginal revenue does not change. Marginal revenue is 0 because there's no change in total revenue. I'll continue with the same example of the haircutting salon that has a monopoly status. It's a single price monopoly. The diagram that you can see over here, on the top panel, you can see the demand curve and the marginal revenue curve. At the bottom panel, you can see the total revenue curve. This is figure 12.3 from your book. Okay. As you know, a monopoly firm faces a marginal revenue curve that lies below its demand curve. Why? Because marginal revenue is lower than the price. The demand curve shows the price. The marginal revenue curve, as you can see the yellow curve over here, it lies below the demand curve. Because in order to sell an extra unit of output, price needs to be lowered. All right. On the demand curve, you already know this from your elasticity chapter. The top half of your demand curve presents elastic demand. The exact midpoint of your demand curve presents unit elastic demand, and the bottom half of your demand curve represents inelastic demand. So this top half is elastic demand, the midpoint is unit elastic demand, and the bottom half is inelastic demand. Over the range from 0 to 5 haircuts an hour, a price cut increases total revenue. So marginal revenue is positive as shown by the blue bars. Demand is elastic. So in the elastic portion of your demand curve, okay, basically for the level of output 0 to 5, the elastic portion of your demand curve, we already know, I have even explained this in the last slide, if you reduce the price, your total revenue increases. So when price is being reduced, your total revenue will increase for the elastic part. Your total revenue will increase and your marginal revenue is positive. These blue bars that you can see represent your marginal revenue. The blue bars are representing positive marginal revenue. How do you understand that it's positive? Because this is your origin, this is your origin, this is your zero axis, okay? All the blue bars lie above it. So these blue bars for the level of outputs 0 to 5 represent positive marginal revenue. Please remember, for this part, your demand is elastic. Over the range from 5 to 10 haircuts an hour, a price cut decreases total revenue. So for the level of output 5 to 10, that means in the inelastic part of your demand curve, when your price is falling, when the price is falling further, your total revenue is decreased. Hence, your marginal revenue is negative. Now, the red bars that you see over here, these represent negative marginal revenues. These lie below the zero axis, so they all represent negative marginal revenues. Marginal revenues are negative when your demand is inelastic. This is because your total revenue falls if you're operating in the inelastic part of the demand curve. So in the elastic part, your marginal revenue, as you can see, is positive. In the inelastic part of the demand, as you can see, your marginal revenue curve, it is negative. It lies below the axis. What happens exactly at this point when your demand is unit elastic? Over here, marginal revenue is 0. At the point of unit elastic demand, your marginal revenue curve crosses the quantity axis. That means your marginal revenue is 0. Okay, at 5 haircuts an hour, this happens over here. Okay, at 5 haircuts an hour, total revenue is maximized and marginal revenue is 0. Demand is unit elastic at this point. Now, if we look at the bottom panel, which is showing us our total revenue curve, okay, and if we match our total revenue curve with our demand curve and our marginal revenue curve, we can see the relationship with our total demand. When demand is elastic, okay, when your marginal revenue was positive and your marginal revenue was, and your total revenue was increasing with the fall in price, if we look at the corresponding points in the total revenue curve, you can see for 0 to 5 level of output, basically on the elastic part of the demand curve, from this point to this point, okay, from 0 to 5, our total revenue is increasing. Our total revenue is increasing. When our demand is unit elastic at the output level 5, our total revenue is maximum. Total revenue is maximized over here, okay, at output level 5. This happens when your marginal revenue is 0. Marginal revenue is crossing the quantity axis. For the level of output 5 to 10, our marginal revenue is negative for the output levels 5 to 10. Okay, this is the inelastic part of your demand curve, and as a result, total revenue over here is falling. Your total revenue is decreasing. So your total revenue increases in the elastic portion of your demand curve. The total revenue is maximized when demand is unit elastic, and total revenue is falling when demand is inelastic. So marginal revenue is positive when demand is elastic. Marginal revenue is 0 and total revenue is maximized when demand is unit elastic. And marginal revenue is negative or total revenue is falling when demand is inelastic. Now, this relationship implies that a profit maximizing monopoly should never produce their output in the inelastic range of the demand curve, right? Since a monopoly has the ability to set its own price and choose the level of output, a monopoly actually never produces in the inelastic part of the demand curve because this leads to negative marginal revenues and falling total revenues. A profit-maximizing single-price monopoly produces an output in the elastic part of the demand, okay? In the elastic part of the demand where marginal revenue is positive and total revenue is increasing.